Joining me now here on Zoom is Liz Snyder from Hillside Garden Landscaping. And today, Liz, you're going to answer some viewer questions for us related to plant issues. Liz, our first viewer wrote in and said, I've noticed some brown leaves and spots on my peonies. What is it and what should I do to treat it or prevent it for next season?
Peonies are typically kind of disease and issue free. You know, they're one of those old time farm plants and they just are beautiful and they bloom for so long. But there is something that they are kind of subject to, and I see it a lot. It's called Peony Botritus, and it's actually a type of fungus. And what that appears as is little dots, kind of circular dots or whole brown leaves. And what that is an issue is when there's a wet season, and it's usually in the spring, you'll see that those fungal spots appear. There's a few things that you can do now, but there's some things you need to do later on in the season. Right now, if you're seeing that brown, it's too late to treat it for the year. So you're not going to put any sort of fungicide or anything on that. What you can do is remove any of those leaves that have the brown, properly dispose of them. Don't just put them in the compost. You want to make sure you're taking them completely away. And then there's some things that you can do to prevent that for the next season. In the fall, you want to make sure that you're cutting down any of those plants that had that fungus, and again, taking those clippings completely away, throwing them away, and making sure the area is really clean over the winter, because those spores can overwinter in the soil and around the peony. In the spring, if you want to divide things and make sure that there's good air circulation around the plants, if there's not good air circulation, you're going to have more fungal issues like that. So maybe spread them out a little farther, maybe move them to an area where they'll get better air circulation. But you can use a fungicide very early in the spring as those leaves are emerging and kind of growing up. That is when you would want to apply a fungicide. You're doing it as a preventative measure. Once you've already got the spots, it's too late. So this time of year, you can just clean them up if you want. Make sure you're cleaning them up.
Okay, so are there any other types of disease issues that we should be watching out for right now?
Very similar to that, in an appointment that I had earlier this week, I had a 9-bark, which was showing some powdery mildew. And so I've provided some photos of that. That can look like bright white kind of silver on the leaves. That can also, turn a little bit kind of brown. Same sort of thing. You want to make sure that you're clipping that out of the plant so that it's not spreading to the entire plant. Dispose of that. Just like with the peonies, next spring when your 9-bark starts to leaf out, if you have issues with that, you can go ahead and treat it with a fungicide at that time. But same thing right now, if you've already got it, it's too late to treat it. So you can just clean it up a little bit. And that same customer had a 9-bark that just didn't come in, very well. And so I'm showing a picture of that too. Oftentimes you kind of wait till this time of year to see that old growth, if there's new leaves coming on that. A good portion of this one, didn't. So what I'm recommending for that is that you just go ahead and cut that kind of down to the base and maybe leave 6 or 8 inches or so. That plant, because there is some good there, will reflush, and that new growth should be, it should come up and kind of replace that plant. Oftentimes when they get that same sort of fungus, because powdery mildew is also a fungus, you want to make sure that you're clipping all that out of there. So every couple of years, it's not a bad idea to cut your 9-bark all the way down and just kind of let that reflush, especially if you have those issues. And also, you want to make sure you've got good air circulation around those plants.
Okay, thank you so much for these tips, Liz, and answering our viewer questions today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Liz Snyder, your home gardener from Hillside Garden Landscaping.
You can watch Home Gardener every week only on Around the Tiers. For today's segment and to find out more, head to WBNG.com, click on Around the Tiers, and select Home Gardener from the drop-down menu. And if you have any home gardening questions that you want answered, send them to homegardener@hillside